Hello, it's Clive to Carl, and I'm joined by Gloria Moss. And I'm sure you've read or heard about the wonderful things that are going on with the BBC and Donald Trump. And so we thought tonight we'd talk about that and what it means, because if Trump can sue for $1 billion, well, what can we do? Because we've been lied to, we've been fooled. So, Gloria, um, take over.
Well, it's been quite a week. It was Sunday that this news broke, last Sunday, which actually the date on the calendar last Sunday was 9/11, the 9th of November. Quite an extraordinary day when we saw the resignation on a Sunday of the Director General of the BBC and the CEO of News. And it came out subsequently that the BBC had been served a letter from Trump's legal team that apologise or else you'll be sued for $1 billion. And yeah, we want an apology and compensation. So today, Friday, which was the deadline date, an apology was offered, but no offer of compensation. So we have to wait for round two and see how Trump's legal team responds to that one. But meanwhile, um, 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 after all this, the very polite apologies from the BBC, referring to an error of judgment, that the program would not be broadcast again, that they regret the manner in which the video clip was edited. This is the video of Trump on Capitol Hill. But they strongly disagree there's a basis for a defamation claim. And meanwhile, the response so far has been that the White House press secretary has branded the BBC a leftist propaganda machine. You smile. That sort of, I thought was nice to have somebody say that. And wait for this, 100% fake news. Their words, not mine.
Broad statement.
What?
A broad statement, that one.
Absolutely. So, as you say, we might ask which other areas could be um, equally classified as errors of judgment on the part of the BBC. And is it time that the party pointing the finger at the BBC should be the public, not just Donald Trump on the other side of the pond, but maybe the British public over here could point a finger? I mean, after all, the White House press secretary is describing the news output from the BBC as 100% fake news.
But they
Maybe
usually get the weather wrong.
yes, yes, that is true. So, with the possible exception of the weather, they may or may not be correct. Um, so, I thought maybe these extraordinary events of the week we could have a little chat about what areas of news perhaps we might prioritize, were the public to be interested in this idea of a follow-up operation. Hmm? So
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I thought, what would the priority areas be? And I put together a very tentative shortlist, and I wrote a little article, which, if anybody wants to read it, it's on the Substack truthreports.substack.com. And that's associated with Truth University. So if you can't find it straight away, then just put an @Truth University and you might find it. So on my tentative shortlist, well, we can go through this if you like. I would put as the well, chronologically speaking, I think we'd have to start with the moon landings back in 1969.
You're not telling me they lied about that. My God.
Well, um, I came across a Substack today, an article written by somebody who calls himself or herself Research Integrity. Sounds good to me. And it's rather shocking, actually, this article in this Substack, dated last month only, 22nd of October. And it makes the following shocking assertion. Here's what it says. The author, who's anonymous, says, I interviewed the widow of the man who was going to be the first man to walk on the moon, a man by the name of Virgil Grissom. He was the most beloved of all the astronauts. I interviewed his widow for 4 hours. He goes on to say, it's her opinion, not mine, her opinion with 100% certainty that he was murdered by the CIA for not cooperating with fraud in the Apollo program. And if that's not bad enough, he goes on to claim that the skullduggery didn't stop there. At least, he says, at least 4 other backup crews were murdered. And he says that we know that Cyrus Eugene Akers killed 1 person, that's 5. And we know the crew of Apollo, this is Apollo 1 we're talking about, was murdered by the CIA. That's 8 altogether, he says.
Wow.
Well, what this article reveals took my breath away, and maybe yours too, Clive. And it doesn't mince its words. It says that they murdered the crew of Apollo 1 because they wouldn't participate in the moon landing fraud. Well, that was all new to me today.
Yeah, I've never heard that before.
And going back to the BBC, I found an article they'd written just last year, July last year, in which they talk about the rockets travelling 240,000 miles from Earth as part of this NASA space program. And, well, I don't know about you, but I thought there's been so much research, information coming out on these moon landings since 1969. And still, the BBC is maintaining the official line and talking about going into outer space, 240,000 miles. Well, we started to talk about, I know we probably will do this another time, but we started talking about these giant trees.
Yeah, exactly.
That may have actually, according to the Epic of Gilgamesh, have scraped the sky. That's one translation of the Epic of Gilgamesh, scraped the sky. And there were experiments in the 1960s where they fired 31 missiles in a vertical direction, and they all came to a halt at 78 miles.
Yeah.
And then I came across another study which was conducted this century, and this was a rocket was created by not an official group. It was a group of citizens, if you can call them that, who created this rocket, and they fired it off, and it came to a halt, sudden halt, at 73 miles. And it didn't break up into pieces any more than the missiles had. It just sort of came to a halt. And this ties into this idea that there may have been these giant trees reaching up to a firmament. What if this realm has a firmament towering over it, as described in Genesis or one of the Psalms? I mean, if that is the case, then talk of rockets, this is what the BBC was saying in July last year, talk of rockets reaching heights of 240,000 miles from the Earth doesn't really figure.
And there are also all those NASA scientists who are on film saying, well, we can't go through the Van Allen belt, which is what I think they call the firmament. Yeah, so even
Ah,
their own scientists are saying, well, we can't go beyond that point. Yet they did with a computer the power of a toaster.
that's so interesting that you equate the Van Allen belt with the firmament, which I've read maybe nothing more than plasma. It's not necessarily a solid
Who knows?
barrier. Who knows?
And you probably heard the story that goes that the firmament was surrounded with water, and then something occurred, and the Great Flood happened when the waters around the firmament collapsed. I mean,
Ah,
I don't know about that one at all, but I do feel that the firmament is real.
and what makes you feel that?
Well, those experiments, there's been some with very high altitude balloons as well. Um, the moon landing to me is an obvious fake, and
Mm.
I mean, there's that picture of the lander taking off. Who went back to pick up the camera with the film in?
Hmm. Yeah. And if we have been lied to, you might say, why does it matter? Okay, they spent billions of American taxpayers' money, but why would it matter? And but it occurs to me it matters because it influences how we think about our position on Earth, in the realm in which we live, and beyond.
Yes,
And they present this view of this amazing, enormous universe with space extending infinitely beyond. And if that is not correct, then that forces us to look again at how we relate to the realm we find ourselves in. I don't know. What do you think? What are the implications of this not being correct?
I think they want the human race to be as confused as possible and give up thinking.
Mm.
And they've certainly achieved that. They've educated people. They went to school. That was a big disaster. How often do I use Latin, Greek, algebra, trigonometry in my life? I don't, basically. Basically, I don't. I mean, Latin would be useful if I'd remembered any of it beyond amo, massa, mat. But, I studied ancient Greek. Fantastic if you're interested. If you're interested in ancient Greek, wow. I spent years on subjects I hated. Anyway, we're getting off the point.
Um, and so that's sort of my number one on my tentative list of
Yeah.
topics that the public could call out because if it's not correct, then that's a big one, isn't it?
Of the moon landing, what to you stands out as the giveaways? The flag waving in the wind that's not meant to be there, or
Mm.
what stands out to you as that's ridiculous?
Well, for me, it's the Van Allen belt that they could have gone through this belt, highly radioactive, in those very, very thin craft that I saw once sitting in the Science Museum in London.
I saw a Russian Soviet one, and it looked like somebody had taken parts of a washing machine, wrapped some aluminium foil round it. I mean, I thought, you can fly in that? I mean, it was
Mm.
just a joke to my, I mean,
Mm.
it looked like it fall to pieces on takeoff, let alone anything else.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's a
So,
great way to steal money, to have a space program.
ah,
Fantastic way to steal money.
I hadn't thought of that angle. Mm.
I
For
mean,
Black Ops or whatever. Yes.
the same is true of the Manhattan Project. I mean, what if, when they said we've dropped a nuclear bomb on Japan, that it was just a whole series of regular bombs and fire bombs and so on, but they had this super secret program where thousands of people never divulged the secret. It was so clever. They divided it up into chunks of knowledge so nobody knew what they were actually doing in total. And nobody spoke. The secrets of the atomic bomb never basically got revealed. But what if it didn't exist? They just used regular bombs, said it was
Mm.
nuclear, and stole the money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same as what my granny told me about the Second World War. She came from Germany and she said, well, prior to the Second World War, there were something like 500,000 Jews living in Germany. Then after the war, 6 million claimed that they used to live in Germany. Uh, or, because my granny got a pension for her whole life for losing property in Germany when she had to leave. And she said it was the Holocaust was the biggest insurance fraud ever, that everybody who said they used to live in Dresden, because all the records had been destroyed in the fire, they all got pensions because they said they lived in Germany. So millions of people claimed the pension from the government for life because there was no proof they didn't live in Germany. Does that make sense?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, might have to cut that bit. Might be too naughty.
Well, it's. I mean, I shouldn't have said black ops. The question is, how far can one go in these chats?
Well, um,
Yeah.
who knows these days? I mean, I used to get censored a lot in my. I've had 2 videos taken down in the last couple of weeks off YouTube. But in the old days, they'd just strike you off. But now they're just removing the videos. It's not as censorious on YouTube as it was.
Mm.
So I've been chucked off loads of times.
You've been chucked off loads of times.
Yeah,
Oh.
but a few times. First time was in 2014. I was one of the very first,
Oh.
along with UK Column, where the government Quango that was in charge of policing videos said, right, take all your videos down within the next 24 hours or we'll fine you all £250,000 each.
Oh.
Yeah. And I wasn't prepared to take them down, but UK Column took it more seriously than I did. And they took all the videos I'd ever done with them down, 30 odd interviews. And
Oh.
eventually, there was so much backlash at that point. Before we all got censored, we were getting much bigger views than we get even now. And the backlash was such that the government backtracked after 5 days of the call center or whatever you ring to complain getting blocked. But it took ages to get the videos back up again, and of course the viewing figures that I was with one video I got 250,000 views or something. Of course that got wiped back to zero.
Oh. Yeah.
But so be it. But each time YouTube throw me out, of course my income goes down because I rely on videos on places like YouTube to get customers to buy a few of my supplements or join the Secret Health Club or whatever.
Mm.
So they've done a good job with a load of people destroying their income. They've had a pretty good job at mine several times.
Mm.
Anyway, I'm dragging you off the subject again. The
No,
BBC.
no, it's just it's difficult to know how far to go. Yeah. I probably shouldn't have said black ops, should I?
Well, we
But
can always cut it out. I mean, do they really care? I
mm,
think if you threaten their income, like you say, there's a cure for something, well, that's a big threat. They don't like
mm,
that. But if you just say this is what they're doing, well, they're
mm,
probably secretly quite proud that somebody's
mm,
noticed,
mm.
somebody cares. Um,
What an interesting perspective you have. That they, make a lot of money.
well,
Oh,
that's money
yeah.
and power seems to be what they like.
Yes.
So,
So the next subject I was going to touch was Jimmy Savile. So we have to be a little bit careful with that one.
yes, people refer to it as PDF files.
PDF file.
Yeah,
Oh,
PDF.
I'm with
You
you.
get it now.
I've got it. I've got it. Yeah,
Yes.
PDF. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to turn my camera off briefly, but you just carry on. I'm still here.
Oh, shall I? So shall I continue?
Yeah, go on.
So here's this tentative shortlist. We started with the moon landings, 1969, and this is just flowing on from the White House press office claim that 100% of BBC's coverage is fake news. What else would we highlight? Well, I don't think we could avoid having Jimmy Savile somewhere on this shortlist. I mean, the standout facts are that in 2012, the BBC made the turned out fateful decision of not airing a Newsnight programme on how Savile, who had died the previous year, 2011, was a serial sexual abuser of young women. Well, some boys, but mainly women. And when that came out, the Director General of the time, who was George Entwistle, he resigned. So it was the same month, November, but this time 2012. And well, this was followed up by a report by police and the NSPCC, who, amongst other things, identified offences carried out at the BBC between 1665 and 2006, so over a prolonged period of time. And the question that arose for many people was why the BBC hadn't brought charges against Savile during his long employment at the BBC. And there were several inquiries, several reviews, one by Dame Janet Smith in 2016, that was just a few years later, which was looking at Savile's reign of abuse at the BBC. And according to the former counsel, now a High Court judge, who wrote this review, a blame, why hadn't the BBC called this out? Well, according to this 2016 review, it was because of the culture at the BBC that inhibited the reporting of abuse. So they blamed the culture of the BBC, and they also blamed the sexual morals of the 1960s and 1970s as reasons why people hadn't called this out over, what was it, 3 decades of abuse? So essentially, this review exonerated the BBC. But I think it leaves open questions as to whether these factors were sufficient reason for the lack of any investigation by the BBC over those decades into the long-time abuse by Savile of children and that came his way. And so, it's those reasons that I think we really must have Savile on our tentative shortlist, and the fact that there was no response by the BBC over those decades of abuse, and not just that, but questions as to why, in the light of this history of abuse at the BBC, the corporation has restored the statue of Prosper and Ariel, which you can see on the side of BBC Broadcasting House. And not only does it reveal a man and a naked boy, but it was restored after it was vandalised by a protester at a cost of £500,000. Now, who is
That's a
footing the
lot
bill?
of money for glue.
Yes, and where is that money coming from? Is it coming from license payers? Or I don't know where that money's going. And moreover, the artist Eric Gill was a known
PDF.
PDF, and abuser who, is known to have abused his 2 daughters, a maid, and, to add insult to injury, a dog as well. And it is now, following restoration, sitting behind a protective screen, according to the BBC, to avoid future damage. And given the strength of feeling on the underlying issues that I suppose led somebody to vandalise it, not that I condone vandalising anything, the public might ask whether their feelings are reflected in this outcome, not only restoring it, but also putting it behind a protective shield. So do you think that has a justified place on this tentative shortlist?
Well, anybody who's seen the statue, it's not right. If you'll excuse my very black sense of humour, at least some of Jimmy Savile's victims were dead.
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable. But then again, he's Charles's best friend.
And Margaret Thatcher's, I believe, as well.
Really? Wow.
Had Christmas with her regularly.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I'd be doing at this point, if we've been lied to consistently, I'd want my license fee back. I mean, I don't pay a license fee because I don't watch the rubbish, but even so, I'd like it back anyway.
Yeah, I used to pay the fee. I don't anymore.
But, what if everybody said, well, I want it back. I want them. You've been lying. You lied about, everything, basically. What would happen if the whole country asked for their money back?
And we have a precedent now, since 9/11 this year. The BBC has now issued an abject apology to Trump.
Yeah. So what about freedom of information requests? What else have you lied to us about?
Well, the next thing on this tentative list is climate change. Could that have been in the mind of Trump's press secretary when saying that 100% of the news output of the BBC is fake?
So let me just go back to the 100% fake. I mean, is that a deliberate obfuscation of the truth? Because obviously it's not 100% of anything is usually not credible. Is that a deliberate ploy to say that so it's discredited? Or I don't know. It just sounds a weird, very odd statement to make.
Yes, it's quite combative. It's provocative is the word I was looking
and it's
for.
clearly not true. I mean, they lie about a lot of things, but to say they lie about 100%, that's just not real.
It's provocative, I think.
Yeah.
It's exaggeration. Yeah. But if we go to number 3 on this tentative list, which is climate change, you're probably familiar with the case of David Bellamy.
Yes. Lovely guy.
Regular on BBC TV. And in 2004, at the height of his career, he described global warming, to use a technical term, as poppycock. And from that moment, this is according to an article where they quote his words. He was interviewed for an article with the Daily Mail. He says, "I wasn't really welcome at the BBC. They froze me out because I don't believe in global warming. My career dried up."
Yeah.
So he was cancelled in, quite early this century. And that sort of sets the scene, really, for BBC reporting on this issue. And there's no mention of people who oppose the view of man-made climate change. There's no reference, for example, to eminent scientists like Dr. John Clauser, who's a Nobel Prize physicist, who at a conference in Korea, Quantum Korea it's called, here are his words. He said, "I don't believe there is a climate crisis. The world we live in today is filled with misinformation. It's up to each of you to serve as judges, distinguishing truth from falsehood based on accurate observations of phenomena." And then, according to an organization known as the CO2 Coalition, he had made these remarks. He'd said, "In my opinion, listen to this, there is no real climate crisis. There is, however, a very real problem with providing a decent standard of living to the world's large population and an associated energy crisis." And he talks about incorrect climate science. Now, none of his views have been reported, to the best of my knowledge, on the BBC. And there's a charter that that's up for renewal, actually, in a couple of years. That's quite an interesting challenge facing whoever takes over as Director General. But the charter obligates the BBC to provide unbiased news. And so if it's not providing us with two sides of an argument, it's, I would have thought, failing in its charter obligations. And two-sided, no, we don't. I don't find that on the BBC coverage of this issue of climate change. So I found an article from last month, right at the end of last month, 29th of October, in fact, where they actually only talk in terms of strident certainty, saying that climate change, quotes, has been without doubt caused by human activities. Now, which sensible person would ever say anything is true without doubt?
It's like 100%. I mean,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
I love the way on a Tuesday the weather's hot, it's global warming. Then on Wednesday the weather's cold. Now it's climate change.
Yes. So
I,
here they are.
in 1980, I remember in 1980 reading newspaper headlines that said New York and other ports will be underwater by the year 2000.
See, strident certainty again. It doesn't serve people well to go down that route, does it? Really? And I would say that in matters of knowledge, we should never be sure of anything. Really, science is never settled after all, is it? And in the words of the best-selling author of Jurassic Park, who trained as a doctor, MD, he is no longer, so we have to say, the late Dr. Michael. Do you pronounce his surname Crichton? What he said, words of wisdom, there is no such thing, he said, as consensus science. If it's consensus, it isn't science. If it's science, it isn't consensus.
Yep.
Period, he said. And so, I don't know, do you feel that climate change should be on this tentative shortlist that the public could?
100%. The idea that CO2 is the problem, that 0.04 or whatever, 0.004, I can't remember, a percentage of the atmosphere is CO2, and you lower the CO2 and the trees die. I mean, how is that possibly a good thing? Who came up with the idea that CO2 is a problem? It's nuts.
Completely. Plants flourish with CO2.
And they die without it. The problem, if we've got any atmospherical issue, is the fact they've cut the trees down and we don't have the CO2 to oxygen recycling system. How many trees are left? Many.
Catastrophe. So number 4 on the list, COVID. I don't think that we could leave that off the list. I mean, looking at the BBC coverage, it makes this is from the last 2020 to, was it 2023, 2024? It makes frequent, continued reference to a virus, for example, when in fact some very interesting work by Christine Massey, who's coordinated freedom of information requests from people all around the world. These freedom of information requests were served on governments around the world and health organizations, asking, please, could you supply us with the information that you have on the SARS-CoV virus that you tell us is causing this problem? And, well, she summarized the results of this big initiative, and it's breathtaking, I have to say. I'm just going to summarize, pull out 5 paragraphs from her summary of what they found. Canada, I think that's where she's based. 53 Canadian institutions, including the Public Health Agency of Canada, Health Canada, and the National Research Council of Canada, have not provided or cited any record describing the isolation of the alleged COVID-19 virus. They haven't done this. They haven't supplied a virus which was taken directly from a patient sample. Just nothing. Nothing. So that's Canada.
Yeah, there have been other freedom of information requests. Have they got proof that any virus exists?
Yeah. She did extend her questions to the viruses that are alleged to lie behind the need for childhood jabs. But let's move to US. What did she find in the US? Similar picture. Many institutions and offices, such as the CDC, Center for Diseases Control, the NIH, the FDA, and various state health departments and universities, failed to provide or cite records of SARS-CoV-2. The CDC in particular has failed to provide or cite any record of SARS-CoV-2 purification. Breathtaking information. China. An FOI request was filed in China, but it didn't receive a response, she says. Then in terms of international organizations, well, the World Health Organization, WHO, they failed to respond to an FOI-type query. The director of the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control, Andrea Ammon, Ammon, has admitted to having no documentation to prove that a virus exists, let alone proof of SARS-CoV-2. So that's the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control. And then the final paragraph, which I'll just read out, what happened when FOIs were submitted to other countries. The following countries, I'll read them out, have also failed to provide or cite records describing the purification of SARS-CoV-2. These countries include the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Switzerland, Romania, Taiwan, Poland, Japan, Finland, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Serbia, Oregon, Colombia, Italy, Philippines, Massachusetts. Italy is interesting because that's where we were told amongst the first outbreaks occurred. Spain, Sweden, Norway, Uruguay, Netherlands, Isle of Man, New Zealand, Australia, and wait for it, UK, Ireland, Denmark, and Argentina. None of the governments of those countries have supplied or cited records describing the purification of SARS-CoV-2.
So if I could interrupt for a moment, for those people saying, well, look, of course it exists. I caught it, as we've discussed in the issue in the video we made before about the Great Plagues. You know, what if you were just poisoned? What if they poisoned the water? What if you didn't catch a virus? What if viruses don't exist? They poisoned you.
Well, that's what Dr. Brian Ardis, in fact, suggests, that
Exactly.
the water supplies were being poisoned, and that he says was easy to affect because the same chemicals are supplied and used by water companies the world over. It's a global industry. And there were other surprises. Christine Massey, she was chasing up a Freedom of Information request that she had submitted to the US Health and Human Services Department. She reports this in, she's got a Substack. You just have to look up Christine Massey, her Substack. She reports this in an article of April this year. And so she was chasing up the Health and Human Services Department and the CDC. And the response she got was surprising, to say the least. Well, she got an automated response from, was it the CDC or Health and Human Services? And here is what it read. It said the FOI office has been placed on administrative leave and is unable to respond to any emails.
How long ago was that?
Well, that was an article she wrote in April this year.
Right. Okay.
So much for transparency. And perhaps the system felt that it was time to pull up the drawbridge.
Yeah. Yeah.
So would you agree we would need to put COVID down on the list because
100%.
the
How many
BBC...
people? How many people in the world, or in England, for instance, have woken up to the fact that they got conned? Do you think? I don't know.
That's very interesting. I did see the results of a research study conducted by King's College London 2 years ago, 2023, when they were asking about people's readership habits. And the bottom line conclusion was that a third of the people mistrusted mainstream media. A third of the people in the sample that they conducted the research with mistrusted mainstream media.
How many of that third are willing to admit that they got conned?
What do you think? I don't know.
I don't know. Not enough yet.
So we've had 4 headline issues today. We've got the moon landings, we've got Jimmy Savile, climate change, and COVID. And well, I think we need something a little bit light-hearted on the list as well. So I put down, tell me what you think of this, Pudsey Bear, who is illustrated with a bandage across one eye. He's had a bandage across one eye for a fair while, poor Pudsey Bear. And I don't know, I just think perhaps the great British public could call for the bear to have some treatment so that both eyes are finally in sight. I mean, in this time of high-tech medical care, it should be possible to organise suitable eye care for Pudsey Bear so that he is no longer a Horus-like single-eyed bear. We like to see our faces with both eyes showing, I think.
I'll move this important topic to the top of my list of things to change in the world.
Not Pudsey Bear, no, but we want to see both eyes. enough of just seeing, just the one. And poor Bear, he does need some treatment for his eyes. So,
So what should people be doing at this point, right? They want to take some action. How do they do it? What is the most effective, quickest way to make a positive change?
well, who knows? Should this be a coordinated
I'm hoping
action?
you know. That was the point.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it just seems to me a precedent has been set now. Trump beat the drum and issued a threat. And in the wake of that, the BBC has offered an abject apology. Well, there are, the license fee is the primary source of funding for the BBC. That's the British people. And if the British people feel, as Trump has done, that they've not been told the whole truth and nothing but the truth, then perhaps they could also, by analogy, by simple analogy, issue a threat. That unless an apology is issued, for example, on these 4 or 5 items, they would like to have their license fee refunded. I suppose the only question is, does that make sense as an action, possible action? And secondly, should individuals just do that off their own back, or would it be best to have some sort of coordinated effort?
Not quite. So people can make up their own minds as to what they should do, I suppose. I heard a couple of days ago that somebody was taken to court and he asked the judge to define the difference between the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. What's the difference?
I have no idea.
I know. The judge didn't either.
Yes. I suppose it's a bit like the 100% fake news. It's a literary device just to make the point. We want you to tell the truth.
Yeah.
But then, so here we are. A precedent has been set, and it's really down to the great British public if they decide to follow in hot pursuit.
Well, everybody's so poor. Maybe it's worth people's while to ask for their license fee back. We were offered unbiased truth. We certainly haven't had it. So, yeah, there are probably better things people could do with their time, but
Yeah, one letter. And if, as you say, many people do it, but this is the beauty perhaps of a coordinated effort. One would know then exactly how many people were involved in this initiative. Whereas if it's just individuals doing it, we have no way of knowing quite how substantial the numbers are. So we're blind to that, which I'm not sure is a benefit. And so there is a Substack article on the points we've been talking about today. And if you want to draw some facts from that for an initiative, if you want to, coordinate some effort, what should people do? Should they contact you, Clive, or?
no, definitely
No,
not.
no, definitely not. Some point of contact. I don't know who that
Well,
might be.
I mean, maybe there is a barrister out there who would like to take on a pro bono class action on behalf of everybody who has a TV license. What it would do would be to perhaps,
Or who had a TV license.
yeah,
Because remember, the first case is the moon landings back in 1969. That's
yeah,
a
yeah,
fair while ago.
yeah. So you want it all back with interest. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe there is a barrister out there who would enjoy the fun of a class action for millions of people. And I mean, I think I quite like the idea.
So maybe this event that occurred on 9/11 can have send out shockwaves beyond what we've seen already.
Yeah. I mean, Trump's talked about the people being thrown in jail for a tweet. It would be nice if some action could be taken there because, you see there be all those people who get thrown in jail for a year plus for a stupid moment in their life. They did something without thinking. But the fact that, you can put a post up, take it down within 10 seconds and still get thrown in jail for it, you had a brief mad thought, then you change your mind. I mean, everybody has those, I think, yeah, crazy world. But, I'm optimistic. The worse things get, the better things get.
Well, quite. And who could have anticipated that we'd see the resignation of such high-level figures at the BBC,
Yeah.
admitting now to their errors of judgment.
Yes, that's a very polite way of putting it.
So I think your ideas are, it's got legs. If somebody's listening who might want to take this on, that could be quite a fun project, as you say.
But
But,
if
but
somebody,
a fun project with a very serious underbelly.
yeah, I mean, if somebody like, the famous YouTube barristers like the Black Belt barrister, if they're real and care, maybe that's right up their street. I don't know. Well, good. Well, let's hope somebody at least watches this recording and does something about it. So I'm going to put this one out right away because it's topical. I'll try and get it out tomorrow.
Great. And if people want to look at the Substack, because there's an article covering a lot of what we've talked about today, it's truthreports.substack.com. And while we're having our discussion, a reminder that there's a very exciting conference next March, not far from London, questioning history, questioning science. And Clive, you'll be running a workshop, a health workshop. You can say a bit about that again in a minute if you'd like. And then there are lots of really interesting speakers questioning a lot of what we've been taught, both about science and about history. And you could have a lovely time meeting other people in a pleasant hotel environment. Clive, do you want to say a little bit about your workshop?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the bit that I enjoy most about these sort of meetings is meeting people. I fall asleep generally in lectures, but
Not in this conference.
not in one of yours, obviously.
No, wait, no.
No. But 20 odd years ago, I started researching the health that was happening before the Second World War. There was a period between maybe the First World War and the Second World War where real health, as opposed to medicine and illness treatment, real health was actually happening. And the hospitals had old-fashioned Tesla devices, which were healing people in an amazing way. They were using herbs, they were using chiropractic techniques. Chiropractic, people think, well, that's new. No, chiropractic has been going on for thousands and thousands of years, adjusting the spine, releasing tension on the nervous system. And, so what I'm going to be talking to some degree about is how it used to happen. People weren't ill like they are now. It's very recent that people have been eating food that's poisoned and not knowing how to deal with that. So, what I'm going to be talking about is really what actually works and what's been hidden as a result, because anything that works threatens the drug money-making cartels. And but the old pieces of equipment, the old Tesla devices still exist. I've been restoring them for the last 20 years, finding them, restoring them, and generally, if I can't get somebody out of pain in 5 minutes with a 100-year-old Tesla device, I'm surprised. And these things still exist. People don't know what they are, so they don't know what they are, but they exist, and people, like myself, are arranging for their restoration to make them usable, functional machines, even though they may be 100 years old.
Mm.
100 years ago, things were generally made to last. Um,
Made to last, yeah.
yeah. I mean,
And
years
fascinating.
years ago, I went to Edison's laboratory in Florida, in St. Petersburg, or somewhere near that, and all the original light bulbs that Tesla and Edison built are still alight today. They built the everlasting light bulb from the start, right? Everlasting was never a problem, but Edison, who was not particularly a nice man, realized that if he created them, they'd only last 1,000 hours, then he'd be in business forever. But if he launched the everlasting light bulb, which was easy to do, he wouldn't have a thriving business forever.
Mm.
That's the history of the light bulb.
So built-in obsolescence is part of a modern business model. It has
Oh,
to be.
100%.
Yeah.
And Edison was part of the start of that whole idea. I
Mm.
mean, from a business perspective, with your business hat on, it's obvious.
It's obvious. And so it is with health. If people are healthy all the time, that's no good for the medical profession.
No, no. Well, a patient cured is a customer lost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, that's fascinating. So, also at this event next March, 13th to the 15th of March, exciting speakers. Mark Devlin talking about predictive programming, and Guy Anderson on Tartaria, which Clive and I touched on a few times. The idea that was an ancient civilization responsible for so much of the beauty in fine buildings around us, and I think possibly also music, fine music, Bach, Schubert. I shall be talking about what I think really caused the plagues across the world, killed up to 50 million people in the Black Death in the 14th century, and cui bono, who stood to gain from 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 all of this. That there'll be a lady illustrating Ruth Milner light therapy, red light therapy, and the benefits of that. So I'm also offering running a seminar called The Greatest Secret. And this is research I don't often talk about, except occasionally, because it's pretty hot stuff, really. It's the untold secrets, really, of that link Jesus to the Grail, and it's not what they tell you in the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail. Something completely different. Linking also to the Knights Templar and to the Mona Lisa, explains why this is the world's most valuable painting, and links also to Romeo and Juliet, and right up to Rennes-le-Château in Languedoc in France. What was the secret that made the priest down in Languedoc in the 19th century, Saunière, become wealthy overnight? All that will be revealed. So if you're interested, if you just want some information, then the email to write to is a simple one. It's learningholidays@protonmail.com. Learningholidays@protonmail.com. We can have a lovely holiday and learn not just from the speakers and good people like yourself, Clive, but also from the people we meet over lunch and dinner and breakfast.
Yeah, that's the best bit, in my opinion.
Mm.
Something I love to point out to people about infrared is that our ancestors used it daily. For
Oh,
a
really?
start, for a start, they went outdoors and got sunshine.
Yes.
Then at night, they would be around the fire, getting straight full on infrared
Ah,
every
I
day.
didn't know that was infrared.
Absolutely.
Fascinating.
And we don't do those things anymore.
No, that's
So
really,
people then spend 2 grand on an infrared light or something when they could be going outside and lighting a fire.
yeah, and lighting a fire. So the message that I'm hearing from you is that the secret to a good life can come substantially from going back in time.
100%. I mean, your ancestors before petrol, before heated houses other than a fireplace or whatever, our ancestors survived right up until now without the luxuries that we think is normal, like hot water and plumbing and stuff. Um, Yet they made it all the way through without any of the stuff that we've got.
Mm.
So obviously they knew a thing or two about herbs or whatever,
Yes,
whatever it took, they
and they
had
were.
to.
I mean, I didn't mention one of the speakers coming over from Bosnia is Dr. Sam Osmanagic, who's
Yeah, I'd love to
excavated
meet Sam.
the Bosnian pyramids, and you will know that he's excavated tunnels underneath these structures, and that the frequencies in those tunnels are incredibly healing. People do before and after measurements of their health, different aspects of their health, and they find real physical change. And he dates those to 30,000 BC, these
Yeah,
pyramids. So, yeah, going back, you can access knowledge that people had, and that in the case of the pyramids, these tunnels were actually filled in. A lot of the work has involved taking out all of the material that they filled the tunnels with
yeah.
for some reason. Was it to hide the frequencies in those
I think
tunnels?
it's tied where the tunnels connect to because they're underground tunnels, literally virtually connecting the whole planet. I mean, yeah,
Ah,
we've talked about it before that the covering up of the underground passageways and the underground cities. I mean, it's just
ah,
ludicrous what they've tried to hide. But of course, with miniaturization, miniature cameras and miniature lights and robots, they can explore the underground stuff that they don't haven't been possible to see in the past. I used to live in Granada, which is a city full of tunnels.
oh,
And many people's houses had a tunnel, and they'd all been bricked up. So,
ah.
yeah, yeah. Tunnel networks. You start researching tunnel networks in whatever place you're living, you'll probably find them. There's a lot.
And I remember you saying on a previous chat that the height of some of the tunnels was very low, and there was evidence of inhabitation. So you were suggesting that the creatures that lived there, humanoid, would have been dwarf-like in size. I
Yeah,
remember you
yeah,
saying.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a very interesting subject, and I've been down into a lot of tunnels. So I found them quite fascinating. And just under London alone, tunnels all over the place, all over the place. You can get into them at places. There's halfway down Haverstock Hill in Hampstead. There's entrances there that you can get in. Place was called um, I there there was a storage. They've used these tunnels for storage. So when people want to store old data or whatever, uh, and yes, there was one of the entrances to the data storage at what had been what appeared to be an abandoned tube station. I know that because when I was 17, I worked as a van driver for the company uh, and went down into all the vaults. And they were used in the Second World War as bomb shelters. Anyway, thank you so much, Gloria.
Thank
Um,
you.
I hope everybody's going to claim back their license or do something positive with this and take action because if we overwhelm them, just like
Mm,
people at the supermarkets, they're going to Tesco or wherever that are filming them. and they have a legal right to demand any copies of any films that they've made. So apparently, lots of the supermarkets are taking out their cameras because they're
Oh.
overwhelmed with people demanding a copy of what they just filmed. So if enough people demand change in whatever form it is, it's always a numbers game. And I think
Mm,
there are an increasing number of, so to speak, us who are willing to say, no, I don't consent to what you're proposing, not going to go along with it. Digital ID perhaps being number one right now.
mm.
People
And I
saying,
don't consent to you filling my mind with information that may not be impartial, which
"Mhm,
is what the
exactly.
Charter obligates the BBC to provide.
Yeah. Well, good. So thanks so much, Gloria, and have a lovely rest of your evening.